What unfolded on Raw last night was the kind of moment that instantly enters the history books. A scene so surreal and electrifying that it felt more like the climax of a movie than a weekly wrestling show. Just days after being hospitalized following the vicious ambush at Clash in Paris, Roman Reigns returned to WWE television in the most unexpected way imaginable. The arena lights dimmed, the cameras panned toward the stage, and suddenly the sound of sirens echoed through the building. Fans turned to see an ambulance slowly backing into the entrance ramp, and speculation ran wild. Could this be another attack orchestrated by Seth Rollins and his new faction, or was it something far bigger? When the doors of the ambulance swung open and the tribal chief himself emerged, dressed in a hospital gown with fury blazing in his eyes, the crowd erupted into chaos. Roman wasn't supposed to be there, and certainly not in any condition to fight, yet here he was, making a symbolic entrance that declared to the world that nothing, not even hospitalization, could keep him down. The Bloodline, on the brink of collapse. In the days leading up to Roman's shocking return, the aura surrounding the Bloodline felt like it was evaporating. What had once been WWE's most untouchable dynasty suddenly looked vulnerable, exposed, and teetering on collapse. The tribal chief himself had been stretchered out in Paris after Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed unleashed one of the most merciless ambushes fans had ever seen, leaving Roman Reigns gasping for air and Jey Uso equally battered. Without its leader, the Empire faltered. Smug and calculating, Seth Rollins declared that the Bloodline era was finished, planting his flag as WWE's new standard bearer. Braun Breaker tore through superstars with raw aggression. Bronson Reed crushed opponents like an immovable wall. Meanwhile, Paul Heyman, long considered Roman's brilliant strategist, looked increasingly uneasy, whispering to officials, lingering in Rollins' orbit, and casting doubt about where his true loyalty lay. For weeks, fans debated whether this was finally the end. Had Rollins found the formula to dismantle the most dominant faction of the past decade, or was this simply the darkest chapter before an even greater Roman resurgence? Those who know the tribal chief's character best warned that his story has always been about defiance. He has never accepted defeat, no matter how dire the odds. And that lingering reminder set the stage for either the complete implosion of everything Roman built, or the most emphatic, jaw-dropping statement of resilience imaginable. The silence before the storm. When Monday Night Raw went live, there was an edge in the atmosphere that was hard to ignore. Fans inside the arena weren't just watching another episode. They were restless, buzzing with the sense that something out of the ordinary might unfold. Rollins opened the show with fiery arrogance, basking in the power his faction had seized. He mocked Roman for being too broken to even respond, sneering into the camera as if daring the tribal chief to prove him wrong. At his side stood Breaker and Reed, two monsters who had spent weeks wreaking havoc unchecked. The visual was clear. WWE's balance of power had shifted, and Rollins was thriving at the helm of his new empire. Backstage segments only reinforced this narrative. Officials scrambled to contain Rollins' chaos. Heyman was caught on camera whispering urgently into his phone, his face unreadable. Commentators speculated nervously about whether the Bloodline's time was truly over. By the time the night reached its final segment, fans were already on edge. Then it happened. The arena lights dimmed, and the unmistakable sound of sirens pierced the silence. An ambulance backed slowly into the entrance ramp, its headlights cutting through the darkened arena. For a moment, nobody knew what to expect. Was this another trap set by Rollins's faction, or was the unthinkable about to unfold? That eerie silence, broken only by sirens, created a kind of suspense that WWE rarely achieves. Every fan, every camera, every ounce of energy in the arena was locked on that vehicle. Roman's explosive return. When the ambulance doors swung open, the eruption from the crowd nearly blew the roof off the arena. Out stepped Roman Reigns, still clad in a hospital gown, his right arm taped with IV marks, but his eyes blazing with fury. He carried a steel pole in his hand like a gladiator returning to battle. The disbelief was palpable. How could a man stretchered out just days earlier now walk with such fire? Yet Roman moved with purpose, charging down the ramp like a warrior with nothing left to lose. The chaos that followed wasn't just a return, it was destruction. Roman hurled himself into Bronson Reed first, spearing the massive star with such impact that both men crashed through the announce table, monitors, and debris scattering in every direction. Before fans could process what they had seen, Braun Breaker charged, only to be leveled with a Superman punch that sent him tumbling head first into the timekeeper's area. The aura of invincibility around Rollins's faction shattered in an instant. Then came the moment that will live forever. Roman standing face to face with Seth Rollins in the center of the ring, the hospital gown hanging off his shoulders, sweat and fury etched into his expression. "You thought I was finished," Roman roared into the microphone, his voice echoing through the stunned crowd. "You thought you could take everything I built. This is my kingdom, and I'm back to claim it." The crowd, already deafening, exploded again. In that moment, Raw delivered one of the most iconic visuals in modern WWE history, the symbolism of the ambulance. Roman's entrance wasn't just dramatic, it was symbolic on every level. The ambulance is supposed to represent defeat, injury, and fragility. It is the vehicle that carries wrestlers away when their bodies fail them, the last sight fans see when a superstar is too hurt to continue. But Roman flipped that symbol on its head. By choosing to emerge from an ambulance, he transformed weakness into strength. He turned the narrative of victimhood into defiance, proving that not even hospitalization could remove him from his throne. The image of him holding a steel pole while still dressed in medical garb was unforgettable. The tribal chief reclaiming his empire by sheer force of will. Fans will remember this not only as a return but as a message. Roman was telling the world that the throne belongs to him until he decides otherwise. The ambulance wasn't his end, it was his stage. The fate of Seth Rollins' faction. Just weeks ago, Rollins' new faction looked unstoppable, a coalition of dominance ready to reshape WWE in their image. But Roman's return threw their aura into disarray. Reed, once presented as a near immovable object, was flattened. Breaker, whose rise had been meteoric, was tossed aside like a rookie. Even Seth Rollins himself, the so-called visionary, looked shaken to his core. The confidence that dripped from his promos vanished as he stared into Roman's eyes, realizing his empire was built on a foundation that the tribal chief could shatter at any moment. Instead of closing Raw in triumph, Rollins backed away, retreating from Roman's fury. For the first time, cracks appeared in his faction's veneer. Now the questions loom. Can Rollins regroup? Can his army withstand the fury of a man who refuses to stay down? Or will their reign of dominance collapse under the weight of the tribal chief's return? Paul Heyman's Shadow Games. While the chaos of Roman's return dominated headlines, fans couldn't ignore the lingering presence of Paul Heyman. The wise man has always been Roman's architect, the strategist behind his dominance, yet recent weeks have cast serious doubt on his loyalties. Was he feeding Rollins information? Was he hedging his bets, playing both sides to ensure his own survival no matter who came out on top? Or was Heyman, in his infinite cunning, quietly orchestrating Roman's ambulance return all along? The ambiguity makes Heyman one of the most fascinating figures in this war. His influence stretches into every corner of WWE, and his words, or his silence, often foreshadow seismic shifts in storylines. Fans know this much. Heyman's loyalty is never guaranteed, and his presence means the next shocking twist is always just around the corner. Whether he stands firmly behind Roman or betrays him for Seth could define the future of this rivalry. The fans' reaction to the shocking comeback, the WWE Universe responded to Roman's return with unmatched passion. Within minutes, clips of the ambulance entrance were trending worldwide. Social media lit up with reactions ranging from disbelief to pure exhilaration. Hashtags like hashtag Tribal Chief Returns and hashtag Roman Reigns were plastered across trending charts, with millions of views accumulating overnight. Fans compared the return to legendary comebacks of the past. Triple H in 2002 after tearing his quad, John Cena's surprise Royal Rumble return in 2008, The Rock's unannounced appearances that shook arenas to their core. Roman's ambulance moment now belongs in that same conversation. What made it so special wasn't just the spectacle, it was the unpredictability. In today's era of leaks, rumors, and spoilers, WWE pulled off a genuine surprise, a moment that no one saw coming but that everyone will remember. For fans inside the arena, it was an emotional experience. Some screamed, some cried, some simply stood frozen in awe. Rarely does wrestling unite fans so completely, but in that moment, everyone agreed they had witnessed history. The larger implications for WWE's future. Roman's return doesn't just spell revenge against Seth Rollins, it carries huge implications for WWE's entire creative direction. Rollins' faction was built to look like an unstoppable juggernaut, but with one dramatic night, that aura collapsed. Now, fans are buzzing with possibilities. Could this storyline evolve into a faction versus faction war at Survivor Series, reminiscent of WWE's greatest battles? Will Roman rebuild the bloodline with new members, perhaps drawing in unexpected allies to reassert dominance? Or will he stand alone, a solitary warrior determined to dismantle Rollins piece by piece? Beyond that, Roman's Hollywood obligations remain a factor. His schedule limits his appearances, forcing WWE to weave real-world commitments into storyline explanations. By using these absences as opportunities for shocking returns, WWE is keeping fans hooked while giving Roman the aura of an attraction, a superstar whose every appearance feels seismic. This ambulance return isn't just a short-term twist. It's a signal that WWE is writing a story big enough to carry them into WrestleMania season and beyond, a message of resilience. At the heart of Roman's return is a message bigger than titles or rivalries: resilience. Fans who saw him stretchered out in Paris believed they were watching the end. Instead, they witnessed a man transform defeat into fuel. Standing tall in a hospital gown over the broken bodies of Rollins' faction was an unforgettable reminder that true strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising again, stronger, louder, and more determined. Roman has blurred the line between vulnerability and dominance, showing fans that he can be both the man who suffers devastating setbacks and the warrior who refuses to accept them as final. His message was clear. The tribal chief does not quit. Injuries, betrayals, and setbacks may come, but every fall only sets the stage for an even greater rise. It is this duality, fragile yet invincible, that makes him the most compelling figure in wrestling today. Final thoughts. The war has just begun. Roman Reigns' ambulance return wasn't just a shocking twist. It was a declaration of war that will define the coming months in WWE. Seth Rollins and his faction thought they had ended the Bloodline era, but what they unleashed instead was a storm that cannot be contained. With Heyman's loyalty in question, Jey Uso's future uncertain, and the possibility of new alliances on the horizon, WWE has set the stage for a saga that feels bigger than titles, bigger than rivalries, and bigger than the squared circle itself. The tribal chief has once again proven why he is the central figure of this generation, the man around whom every storyline ultimately revolves. The only question now is how far he will go, and who has the courage to stand in his way. For fans, the excitement lies not in the answers, but in the anticipation. Because one thing is certain, the war has only just begun,